Greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well today. Today, I have a subscriber who, his brother reached out to me. I shared his encounter. Actually, I narrated his encounter. He is a law enforcement agent out of Louisiana. He's on the show tonight to share his horrifying encounter that he had while on duty. Before we get into his encounter, a couple links. As you know, I rely on my Patreon, my PayPal, and my merch to help this channel to continue to grow and go. All of those links are in the description below. I also have a second channel for creepypasta, fanfiction, scary voice acting. Stories that, well, they just don't fit on this channel. Now, if that's anything that you're into, follow that link and give those stories a listen. You may just like what you hear. Now I've taken enough of your time, everyone. Let's get on with today's upload. Shall we? Also, really quick before we get into the upload, I'm going to address something. Last night after Scott and I did the interview, he and I started laughing about something, a couple of things that he said. As you can tell, he was talking very fast. He literally hates talking about his first encounter. But when he said bear, he knows there is no bear in Scotland. He was literally just talking, trying to give it some sort of comparison to what size this thing was. And then, of course, obviously 6 miles in 5 minutes, that's physically impossible. It was more or less, I'm sure people have said things like, I ran 100 miles a minute or 100 miles an hour to get out of there. Well, I've read in the comment section a bunch of people that are calling him a liar. So I'm here to address that. He obviously knows there's no bear. He was trying to look for a comparison. And he and I were talking prior to him doing the interview, just talking about something. And I said, hey, are you up for that interview yet? And he said, yeah. I kind of put him on the spot when he did it. So for all those people calling him a liar, he's not lying. And I'm sure that, you know, when you have told stories or relive something, you know, and you're put on the spot, you kind of get your words jumbled. There was a couple of people, one guy that lived in Scotland and, you know, he actually was calling him names, and then another person that lived in Sweden that was calling him names. And a couple other people. You know, it's just, if you don't have anything good to say in the comment section, unsubscribe and just go away. You know, I don't need you here, so just stay off my channel. All right, everybody, tonight I have a subscriber who we are going to have him remain anonymous. We're not going to give him a fake name. He is here to share his encounter with us. And just like I do with every interview, I give them the floor and they share their encounter with us. How are you tonight? And thank you for coming on.
Hey, man, I'm doing good. And I'm glad to be here.
So you have an encounter. There's a lot that you kind of need to keep secretive. So I'm just going to let you share your encounter the way that it happened and the way, that way I can respect your anonymity. So the floor is yours, my friend. Share away.
Hey, that works, man. I appreciate it. So a little bit about me. I grew up outside Chicago. My family was really into going fishing out in the woods. Well, basically outdoorsy stuff. Grew up in Boy Scouts, camping, camping with my family. I got 2 older brothers and my dad, and, every summer we'd go up to Minnesota, and, we'd go to an outpost cabin and spend a week up in the woods in far northern Minnesota, fishing, hiking, camping. And then as myself and my brothers got older, we moved into, taking that vacation from Minnesota up to fly-in cabins in Canada, and to a certain point up to far, far north Canada. So I'm no stranger to the woods. I'm far more comfortable in the woods than I am, around water and things like that, just to put in perspective on how comfortable I am in the woods. After high school, joined the Army, spent little over a decade in the Army. I deployed a whole bunch of times to a bunch of different places. And now I'm working for a sheriff's office in Southwest Louisiana, and about a year and a half ago, was still on patrol. Probably, maybe a little bit closer to 2 years now. Was on patrol, and I was out in a real small town, and there's 2 main thoroughfares that go through this town. One's running east-west, and one runs north-south. And I just hung a right, turned south onto one of the roads. I'd gone down a little ways. I was on the phone with another one of the deputies late at night, left for midnight or so. And I could see this thing just right across the roadway in front of me. And, it was to the point where, I saw him on the phone with my buddy, and I'm like, holy expletive. And he's like, hey, what's going on, man? Are you okay? And I'm like, yeah. I just saw something, but hold on a second, man. And I hung a U-turn and turned back around to go north, and I flipped the LED scene light on my car, and what it was that I saw, I couldn't see anywhere. It was gone. This thing vanished. But what I remember seeing was this dog-like, kind of almost raccoonish creature, but it was massive. I was in a Charger to kind of give you a size perspective of this thing, and it was running on its back legs, but it was hunched way forward, like if you were to think about like a raccoon that takes off running on just its hind legs, like if it was holding something. It ran like that, but this thing's back was probably 6 inches or so higher than the rear view mirror of my Charger. So, you got to figure that's 3 feet, 3.5 feet high. But this thing was like 6 freaking feet long, man. It was all dark colored, either a dark brown or a black color, and the tail on it. So I've got a German Shepherd, and this is why I kind of picked that analogy to use, because everybody knows how German Shepherds have, for their body size, extremely bushy, long tails. And it was just like that. And this thing shot across the road faster than I could imagine, a raccoon or something. My first thought was, okay, maybe I saw a black bear. Because in your brain you try to rationalize something that you can't necessarily explain with something you've seen before. Well, I'm sitting here thinking back about it, and my brain immediately was like, okay, well, maybe you saw a black bear. Well, hold on a second. Black bears don't have tails. Well, maybe you saw a raccoon. No, that was way too big, and it didn't have any other kind of like the unique like gray striping, things like that of a raccoon. Then your brain kind of starts to process, well, what the heck did I see then? And it really kind of freaked me out. To the point where I was so stunned by it that I didn't even think about hitting the record button on my dash cam. I wish I had, because our dash cams roll back basically 30 seconds of just video. So had I hit the button, I would have had it on video, but I didn't think about it. It moved so fast, and it stunned me with what it was. I wasn't even thinking about doing it. But the story gets a little bit crazier. So, as I said, it's a real small town where I was at. Working night shift like that, our policy is, hey, go in, check gas stations, check the convenience stores, kind of make sure that, all the businesses that are open late at night are okay, and that, nothing's going wrong and everybody's safe, things like that. So I go into one of the gas stations that I go to, and this is probably, 3 o'clock, 3:30 in the morning or so. And I'm talking to the clerk. I've talked to the guy before, and, you know, the usual kind of talk comes up. You know, hey, man, how's your night going? Hey, you have any crazy calls? Anything crazy happen? Because everybody wants to know kind of, you know, what's the inside scoop on what's going on in town, that type of stuff. And I'm just kind of like, you know, yeah, I mean, I saw something. It was weird, though. You know, I just turned off the highway, you know, to turn south, and man, I don't know what it was that I saw. And that's all I told the guy. Simple as that. I didn't describe it. I didn't anything, because, you know, when you talk to somebody, you don't really, you don't know if they believe in this stuff. You don't want to sound crazy, especially when you're in a law enforcement or a law enforcement position where, you know, you don't want anybody to question, you know, soundness of mind, mental judgment, anything like that. And the guy goes on to tell me, he's like, yeah, man, yeah, I saw something crazy the other day, too. I was riding home from work, and, you know, I'm riding my bike, and, you know, I just turned south on the highway. You know, I just crossed, you know, there's a couple landmarks right there. And he goes on to describe literally exactly what I saw. He's like, you know, I mean, I saw something. I'm not sure what it was, but, dude, it looked like the biggest raccoon I've ever seen, but this thing was, like, all black. It had this huge bushy tail. I mean, he described the exact same thing. And I literally just stood there dumbfounded and was like, you know, you get that moment where you kind of, you almost lock up because you're just shocked, like, holy crap. Like, all the rationalization that your brain tries to do when you see something like this goes out the window when somebody else describes the exact same thing that you saw, but you didn't say what it was that you saw. And all of a sudden your brain goes, okay, well, hold on. So I did see that. And he just looks at me, and he's like, oh, shit. Pardon my language.
That's all right.
So you saw it too? Yeah, I mean, thank God I thought it was crazy. And it sat with me for a while. And finally, you know, I talked to my brother, who's kind of big into the, you know, Bigfoot, Dogman, you know, lizard man kind of, or lizard people scene. And I talked with him, and I was like, hey, man, so I got this crazy story for you. And I told it to him, and he's like, holy crap, dude. Like, you know, I don't think you're crazy at all. I think you saw a juvenile Dogman. And I'm like, wait, what? And he goes on to explain it, and I kind of, you know, recently started doing some more research about it, and there's a whole huge, like, folklore about this stuff in Southwest Louisiana, which really freaked me out even more. And now I'm totally sold on it. I mean, that's the only real explanation for what it was that I saw. And it's still, to this day, when I go back to that area, I get goosebumps thinking about everything. And it is still so vivid, like everything that happened in my brain. It was crazy, dude. It was absolutely crazy. But it was, looking back now, probably one of the coolest, most unique things I think I've ever experienced in my life.
Yeah, it definitely is a unique experience when you have one of these encounters. One thing that you and I talked about prior is the amount of woods in the area and the where it ran to. It kind of ran towards water. And then when I was saying, you know, I talk about how they use the waterways as roads. You brought it up. You brought a very interesting fact, is that they use water for the reason of covering their scent.
Yeah, and so that's one thing that, you know, you're right, bringing that back up. So the direction that it ran from the west side of the road to the east, and since I was traveling south, when I hooked around to I made a left-hand U-turn, so I turned east and turned north. I had to have turned to the north because there was a large building there, and had it run north, it would have run directly to where there's a small kind of waterway there that, if you think about it, that naturally occurring waterway, one, is going to create a break in the foliage due to the large amount of wooded area around that's going to allow it to traverse the terrain extremely quickly, as well as, just like we said, waterways will naturally help break up scent if something's trying to track you. So when you're not leaving that scent on the ground, you're not leaving it on any sort of brush or tall grass, anything like that. When you're going through moving water, it breaks up any scent trail extremely quick, as well as, since you're below the natural surface of, just kind of the flat part of the land, it does help mask you from just natural vision. Rather than, obviously, if it were to run up to high ground, it would be silhouetting itself against the horizon. So animals will naturally run lower like that to try and break up that field of view, as well as, obviously they're smart enough to know, hey, waterways will break up any sort of scent trail.
Right. Yeah, that was, for the last couple of years, I've had this channel for almost 3, I really never put that into thought, and until, you had brought that up, and it made perfect sense because, during like those, like Tommy Lee Jones, whenever he's running away from somebody, he's always going to the water and fugitive and stuff like that. So it kind of makes a lot of sense. Now, has there been, I know that you don't bring it up because of your career, but have you heard any other of your, your law enforcement friends or partners seeing any other things like that?
So there's one guy who no longer works for our agency. He kind of moved on to some other stuff. And he had said that as a kid, he'd seen some things that he couldn't really explain, but it was a really, really long time ago for him. So he was, young when he saw it, and kind of, he and I joked around, and I told him the story one day, and he's like, holy crap, dude, like, no, I know exactly what you're talking about. And he grew up hunting in this area and things like that. And that was and me telling him and him kind of talking about it, saying that he saw something really similar. He was the one that actually tuned me on to, hey, look up some of like the culture, like the historical culture and like the folklore of this area. And it really kind of tripped me out, that I'm going to kill the French Cajun pronunciation here, but it's something along the lines of like the loup-garou or something.
Yeah,
from what I read, was this almost Dogman style creature that was, told from parents to their kids to say, don't go in the swamp, stay out of the swamp. There's a creature out there that'll get you. Well, the interesting thing that I always think about with, folklore and stuff like that is, I believe that there has to be something that triggered these, this folklore stuff and this description of things that people talk about and things like that. Like, there has to almost be some sort of basis for it. And it makes me wonder if this is kind of tied into that. And if that's, if I saw the creature that they're talking about with this stuff that, goes back 200 years in the local culture.
Yeah, I think just like you said, I every time I talk about Louisiana or share an encounter, I just destroy the French Cajun names, but Homa, they have a Rougarou society there, and I did a whole probably 3 videos just on encounters with the Rougarou from like the early 1800s up through, and it's steeped in the culture out there. It's a perfect area for it. You've got woods, you've got swamps, and it's just terrifying. So
yeah.
Now, did you see any?
Now, Homo.
I'm sorry. Ahead. No, you go ahead. I cut you off. I'm sorry.
So Homo, where you're talking about, is way east and a little bit south of us. It's south of Baton Rouge, more towards the New Orleans area. And as I said, I'm on the southwest side of Louisiana. But the terrain, in South Louisiana is still fairly similar in the sense that you got a lot of marshlands, you got a lot of woodlands, and you got a lot of waterways and things. And one of the big things in that area is you've got a lot of, in the Houma area is, you've got a lot of the bayou areas, you've got a lot of natural waterways and things. And now where I'm at is kind of that same kind of similar terrain with large waterways and things like that, as well as a lot of marshland.
Yeah. Did you, I know it went by so fast. Was there, you didn't happen to catch eye shine or anything, did you? During the, it was...
No, so I didn't catch eye shine at all, but what I also remember, since you brought up kind of that other side, I described the tail and everything like that. Whatever it was had a massive head and a very, very defined. Now, in the sense that, if you look at a truly German bloodline German Shepherd, their heads are they're a lot wider and kind of shorter snout length. They're not like pit bull style or like that, but it's not the same kind of long, thin snout that some dogs have. They're slightly shorter and stubbier, almost as if they've got a much wider bite. And it was very, very similar to that. And again, I jump back to that as kind of a natural thought with describing it because I have a German bloodline German Shepherd, and it shocked me the amount of features in this thing that I saw in this Dogman, what I believe was a juvenile Dogman, and just a incredibly large canine, but this thing was way too big to be a dog. It was way, way too big to be a dog, as well as the way it ran. It was, you could tell it was running on two legs, and the front legs of it were not on the ground at all, but they were also disproportioned from what a normal kind of canine anatomy looks like. The front legs were slightly more humanoid, you know what I mean? As
right.
If they would also be able to function as a, arm. And as if they could manipulate it like how a human being can manipulate their arms versus, a dog, a true canine, can't really, manipulate their front legs like how human beings can manipulate our arms.
Right. So there was almost more of an elbow kind of bend rather than just that straight down.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes, exactly. That's a perfect way to define it or to describe it.
Now, once again, and I hate to ask questions because I know it was a very fast, but was there, obviously you saw some sort of elbow bend with the arms. Were you able to notice the hands or paw area of it?
To be honest, I don't really remember that.
Okay.
But at the same time, I remember the way it was running. It had that same kind of similar, that natural rhythm of how your limbs move when you're running.
Mm-hmm.
That same similar motion kind of carries its arms or front legs. So I wouldn't think it was holding anything necessarily, but that same kind of rhythm that you run with and how, your arms naturally want to sway as you're running, that same style of motion kind of carried through the whole body.
Right. Yeah, because when you run, and especially if you're hunched back, you're kind of your arms, no matter what, they just kind of, they're oddly shaped and they bend in no matter what. And it's so weird. I like how you used the description of raccoon, because the more I've done research on these things, I mean, yes, they've got a dog-like appearance, they've got a human-like appearance, but they have such a raccoon-like appearance as well. You know, it's like a cross between all three, with the bushy tail, but the way their arms are and the way they're able to manipulate their arms, raccoons do as well. I've researched prehistoric raccoons back, a couple 6 months ago, and there was actually a species that was almost the size or a little larger than us, that was, a couple 100 million years ago, and they were huge too, and able to, but it's a kind of a far-fetched idea to think that one of those things had made it through that long without being noticed. But they have such a raccoonish-like features to them the more I think about it. So, that's a great analogy on that. I really appreciate you coming on today. I know that, you were worried about your anonymity. So, it shows great courage to come on. And I think the more that we have people like you, it actually adds some just credence to it, if you say, because you're in law enforcement. It's not like you're just an everyday guy. It's you are actually someone that we as everyday people turn to protect us and look for answers. And there you are having an encounter going, what is that? What do I do? It's just, I think the more encounters that get out there, I think that eventually we may get the truth of the matter. So.
Yeah, I couldn't believe it. And it just, the way since we're on the raccoon subject, there's a really funny video that I'd seen that, I was telling my brother about it, to try and describe kind of exactly how it was that it ran. There's a really funny video of this guy that takes a video of a raccoon on his back porch, stealing his cat food. And the raccoon runs up and grabs a handful, and it takes off running on its back legs. And I showed my brother, and I was like, dude, that's exactly how it ran, except it didn't have anything that's front, paws, hands, whatever it is you want to call it. Its front limbs. So it was just running, as if you were to add kind of that humanoid motion of how the body naturally wants to kind of twist and move to kind of conserve some momentum as it's moving. And he watched the video and was like, dude, that's totally what you saw. And he's kind of the one that really kind of tuned me on to this stuff. He's actually the one that, had heard your video, and he's the one that emailed you and put us in contact.
Yeah. And I'm so glad that he did. I was shocked when he did. I was like, oh my God, this is great. Because it was one of those encounters that just sat in my head. I was like, oh my God, this is really... And then for you to go into the store and say... And then the guy to say, I saw the same thing, so you kind of knew that you weren't going crazy. It kind of validated what you saw a little bit, was very cool.
And that's the craziest part is, as I said, I didn't tell him what I saw. I just kind of left it off as it's been kind of a crazy night. I saw something earlier, but I just wasn't really sure what it was, and it kind of tried to play it off as somebody else might think, it was a crazy car wreck, or it was a crazy call, and you couldn't really figure out exactly what was going on, type of thing, or something like that. And the fact that he just jumped in and just straight up described seeing the exact same thing in the exact same spot just literally kind of left us both dumbfounded, standing there like, whoa, okay. And kind of like how I'd said, I thought to myself, okay, I'm not crazy. You can tell by just the look on the guy's face, he was thinking the same thing. As soon as he saw that reaction come out of me, I guarantee you that guy was going, oh, holy crap, I'm not crazy. This dude saw the exact, like we both, you've got that like mental moment where you know what they're thinking and they know what you're thinking and you're both thinking the exact same thing, and it's, holy cow, we're not crazy.
Yeah. Now, when you said he saw, was it pretty much in the same vicinity?
He described it as the exact same spot, traveling the same direction, everything. And what blew my mind about it is that, he told me he was riding his bike home.
Yeah.
Like, I would be terrified to be riding a bike home after seeing that, late at night, early in the morning, and then telling it to somebody else and having them completely validate exactly what it was that you saw and be like, I saw the same thing in the same spot.
Yeah, I'd be definitely looking for a new route home or possibly a ride because, the way the thing moved in front of you, it's obviously going to be able to catch that poor guy on his bicycle, so...
Yeah, I ain't gonna lie. I rolled around the rest of that night with my windows up. It's like, nope.
Yeah. I wonder, we talked, and you had me pull up the map. I wonder if it's like, if he's going hunting that way or after a hunt going that way. Because just judging from the map of what I saw, I would almost suspect him to be coming back from his hunting ground.
Yes. When you think about it like that, that would be my suspicion as well.
Yeah.
Because going west of that area is far more densely wooded, as well as it goes to a much larger waterway that, if it's hunting other animals, well, animals are going to be attracted to waterways for numerous reasons. Some of them, like we talked about earlier, but also, it's a water source.
Right.
If you're looking for some sort of prey, think about what crocodiles do in Africa with, water buffaloes and things like that. Obviously a crocodile is going to be hunting in a waterway, but at the same time, where do, lions and some of the other predatory animals hang out? They hang around water sources because they know that prey are going to go there.
Yeah. Almost lying in wait for them to...
Yeah.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. That really does. Well, I really appreciate you coming on. Don't hang up after we end the show. Is there anything that you'd like to tell the subscribers out there before we end the upload?
Just, guys, gals, all I got to say is if you see something, don't rule the possibility out. It's a real big world, and I say that from, by age 25, I'd been to every continent except Antarctica. You never really know what you're going to find. You never really know what you're going to see, and there's a lot of mystery out there.
Awesome. Thank you for coming on. I really appreciate it. It's been a pleasure.
Hey, you too, man. I appreciate the offer.
Wow. Right there. That just validates every time I have a law enforcement officer or a military person or someone that is in the public eye. Even though I've had my own encounter, it kind of just solidifies that these things are there. And the more encounters that I narrate or I have people discuss on the show, the more questions I have and the less answers I get. It's amazing. It never ceases to amaze me. this guy was great. I really enjoyed talking to him. I really enjoyed having him on. And I'm really glad that he brought up that subject of the water because, I was like, yeah, they use waterways as a way of travel. And he goes, you're forgetting one thing. And I said, what's that? And he said, it covers up their scent. And, that little bit of information, I overlook it. And I overlooked it. And like I said, every day I learn something new from you guys, whether it's an encounter sent in or it's an encounter shared in live. I'm always learning something from you guys every day. And that's why I honestly say I don't know everything. I don't know anything. I'm learning all the time. Anyway, I really hope you guys enjoyed today's upload. We should be hearing something soon about my first audio book written by Tom Lyons, Dogman, Frightening Encounters. That should be out on Audible. I'm hoping next week sometime. And I am getting ready to submit the second full audio book that I did, volume 2 of Dogman Frightening Encounters. I'm looking forward to that being up so I can go ahead and listen to it myself. It's definitely an achievement. I never thought starting this channel I would have a couple of audio books under my belt. That's really cool. Anyway, guys, thanks for everything. Thanks for always tuning in, and thanks for being here. And with that, I'm going to bid you farewell.